Hey, Journal Goddesses. This is your girl, Dion, the Tea Priestess Rough Sloan. And I know I always tell you that I have a treat for you, but oh my goodness, I get to talk to the most amazing people, And today is no exception. As a matter of fact, I'm getting chills just thinking about all of the juicy things that are going to come forth because I get to talk to Chris Zydel, who is an amazing artist. She is a creative healer, and she really has the amazing capacity to help you get to a creative and spiritual place within artwork, even if the artwork is not for public consumption. If the artwork is just for you, she helps you to paint fearlessly and move that energy that you get from the painting fearlessly into other areas of your life. And I am just thrilled to be able to talk to Chris. Chris, thank you so much for taking time to be with me.
Oh my God, Dion. Thank you. And that was like the best introduction I think I've ever had. So thank you. That was just gorgeous. And you really got it. I mean, you really get it.
Yes. So as I was telling you, we were talking before, I was saying that years and years ago, when the internet was kind of a new frontier, you had participated with others in Wish Camp and had brought forth a little teaching, and I really enjoyed it because it was one of the really tangible ways I could see how you bridge the spirituality of working with the elements in a creative container and really getting into that juicy energy of being in co-creation with all of the elements, with earth, with water, with air, with fire, with your spirit fusing with the divine spirit of your understanding. Where did that kind of work come from? Because I know as a teacher, we end up teaching what we need to learn, right?
Oh yeah, that is the goddess's truth.
Yes. So take me a little bit through your experience of your own processes in that. How did you come to that?
Well, I've told this story a lot, but it's because it really is very powerful and very true. So I grew up in a family where both of my parents were very talented. They were very creatively talented. My mother had this gorgeous singing voice, and my father could have been, he had a lot of talent around drawing and painting and that kind of thing. But it was a real working class family. And so, the arts and creativity was not valued. And so they didn't get any support, in order to be able to develop their gifts. And so their hearts were broken. I always talk about how I grew up, and I want to cry as I say it, even though it's an old story, but still it's very fresh, that I grew up in this family with these two artists with broken hearts. And when I wanted to be creative, they couldn't support me. Like I have this other story where my father would take me to a toy store, and I loved like these plastic horses, and I would bring them home and I would play with him. And so I really wanted to learn how to paint them, and I wanted him to get me some paints, and maybe a book about how to paint. And he kept saying he would do it, and he kept saying he forgot. So again, like it never happened. And it was that way that then my heart got broken, and it was, I understand now, it wasn't anything malicious. It was just that he was never supported. He couldn't support me. So, when I started doing my work as a healer, I needed to heal that wound in myself. I really needed to heal my own broken heart around my creativity. And then, of course, it became this thing that it was something that came out of me that I wanted to really, really kind of spread it, and bring other people into my circle, into my, into containers that I created to help them heal that wound in themselves. So that's where it came from. That's really the core.
And I think that, I feel like that wounded place of even that wounded place of the starving artist is where a lot of us have to heal, because we are creative as children. Nobody tells us it has to look realistic. Right. We're just, when you bring home the picture of this is, and you tell your parents, oh, this is you, mommy, this is you, daddy, this is the dog, yes. And it's that kind of childlike simplicity is
Yes.
celebrated up to a
Yes.
certain age.
Exactly. Up to a certain age. That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Well, yeah.
it's broken, right?
It's broken. Exactly. Well, and that was the other thing too. Like when I became an adult and I wanted to start getting involved in art, I didn't want to take art classes because I
Mm.
didn't want somebody telling me what to do or telling me that I was doing something wrong. I really wanted to reconnect with what you're talking about. You know, I
Mm.
wanted to reconnect with that childlike part of me, you know, that just wanted to play and wanted to see what would happen. So I did take, you know, some art classes that were local in the Bay Area, where the focus was just on being creative without the product. The product was not important.
Mm.
And it was such a revelation because it was really fun. You know, it was really amazingly fun. And I felt like I really healed the wound. But it also, the thing that I didn't anticipate was how much it opened me to spirit. It was like, whoa, it
Mm.
was like a direct conduit, you know, to all
Mm.
this spiritual energy, you know, just through the act of creation without worrying about what it looked like, you know.
Mm.
So it was like, that was like, whoa. That was a huge turning point in my life as a creative, and then also just as a being. And it was a way for me to find my way, find my path in terms of, you know, doing spiritual work. So
Mm.
that
Mm.
was a big part
Mm.
of it too.
Mm. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous.
Yeah.
And so you started doing that. At what point did you decide that I really want to start teaching this? People really need to know this, how to do this for themselves. When did that shift kind of happen for you?
Well, so I've been in the healing profession like my whole adult life. I
Mm-hmm.
started in my late 20s. I'll be 67 this year, so it's been, you know, over 40 years at this point. So kind of, and I started out learning about body-based healing. You know,
Mm.
I started out with massage. There wasn't as much. Nobody knew that much about trauma 40 years ago. You know, so there wasn't
Mm.
really that kind of emphasis. But a lot of the stuff that I was doing was really about healing trauma. We wouldn't have called it that at that point.
Right.
Um, and then I started, you know, I got trained and I went to school to become, you know, like a psychotherapist, and I started working with people, you know, so using the body and then using, you know, kind of working in relationship to heal. Um, and then I discovered the painting process. So kind of like everything that I did for my own healing, I always turned it around pretty
Mm. Mm.
immediately
Mm.
and gave it back to my community, you know, because that's part of my role this lifetime. For whatever reason, you know, my role is to really
Mm.
be in that role of the healer, you
Mm.
know.
Mm.
And not that I heal anybody, it's not that. I just create kind of healing containers that people can step into, and then they can get in touch with their own healing.
Mm.
So it happened pretty quickly. I mean, I guess I'd started painting for myself in 1989, and then I was teaching by 1994. So I guess it was about 5 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So one of the things that I adore in the noise of Facebook, there are specific people that I look for, and I look for your posts,
Mm,
especially shortly after you've done a class or a retreat, because
mm,
you post kind of some of the musings as a facilitator, and
right.
some of the musings that people who have come have
Hmm.
have shared as well. What has been the most surprising kind of revelation for you with your students?
The most surprising thing. Um, that's a good question. Um, hmm. I mean, there's a lot of different things. I mean, sometimes what's surprising is really how challenging it is, you know, for
Mm-hmm.
people to really kind of get this, you know, that
Mm-hmm.
there's so much in the way of people really being able to surrender, you know, to their own creative flow, because there's a lot of attachment to doing it the right way and a lot of attachment to control. A lot of people get really attached to being the artist and what they think that means, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And they think that it means a particular thing and, you know, a lot of it, I mean, there's just so much baggage around the word artist, in this
Right, right,
culture.
right.
And so, so there's a lot of it that's like, well, you're only an artist if you're making money, or you're
Mm.
only an artist if other people like your work, or you're only an artist if, it's I don't know, like if it looks good in a certain way. I mean, there's all these different things,
Right,
and
right.
so the thing that always surprises me is because I know how empowering and how healing it is to just open up to spirit and let it come through. I mean,
Mm.
there's nothing like that,
Right.
and having, and
Yeah.
what that's like.
Hmm.
Yeah, of course, the priestess, of course, but so people get really attached to the thing because they think the thing, which is the painting or the good painting or the approval they get around the painting, is going to give them that connection, and it never does.
Right.
Because the connection, it's like you have this direct conduit, you have this direct experience of spirit.
Mm.
And that's what I'm offering them. And I'm always really surprised when people are like, well, no, I want to just be the artist. And it's like, oh, okay. It's almost like it's like the booby prize or something.
Yeah. It's funny to me because the way that you talk about that creative process is very similar to the way that we work in Priestess, in that, yes, in that I'm not giving you anything that wasn't already there.
Yep.
I'm showing you how to clean off the connections.
Yep.
And
Yes.
refigure the connections so that you have that direct conduit, because
exactly
the conditions that we have that have been either put upon us by society, by another person, by the mentors or the teachers or whomever else in our life, and by our own selves, has just kind of rusted out some of the connections, or
Love
maybe
that.
just weakened the connections. And so as a facilitator, I have these tools that I can use to show you how to clean off of that connection.
Exactly.
So that you still have that flow.
Exactly. That's
Because
exactly
the flow
it.
is there. It's just the blockage that you have to go within to find.
Exactly. Oh my God, that's so beautiful, Dion. That's exactly what it is. And I love that metaphor, that analogy of the connections, like kind of the connections get kind of crusty, and rusty. And that's exactly what I'm doing. So I'm offering people, it's like, okay, here's the ways that you get in your own way. Here are the things that you think, here are the beliefs that you have, here are the patterns that you have. And what I'm going to help you do is to recognize those so that you can let them go, and then you can be open to this incredible healing energy, this incredible, spiritual connection. So yeah, it's exactly that. So I'm not teaching anybody anything. I'm just helping them to recognize where they get in their own way. And then, give them some tools that help them. Again, I love that analogy, to clean off those connections, so that they can have direct access. And that's the real gift. So yeah, beautiful. And it is hard for people. I don't know if it's that people don't trust that it's there, or they just haven't had much experience with it, but so it's always, it's sad for me sometimes, that, I'm saying, okay, here's this thing. You can't even imagine what this is going to be like for you. This is going to blow your mind and your heart open. And they're like, yeah, but there's this other thing, and I know what it is. And so I really want to hold on to that. So, it takes patience, it takes compassion. I do that. I bring that to my students also. But that's always the thing that surprises me the most. So.
I also find that it's, I know for myself, and let me put that in the context of myself, it almost felt to me as if I needed the practice strengthening the muscles like a baby. And I find this very interesting because my son was really little at the time that I first took a class with you. And there were still things that I was having to be patient with him. I think he was probably about 4 or 5. And so the way that I would talk to him about doing stuff was way different than the way I was talking to myself about doing stuff.
Yes, and that's beautiful. That's
and
really beautiful.
So I think that's kind of have been brought into my own facilitation, in that I feel like I'm holding, you know how you hold the baby's fingers as they're learning to walk and the muscles are strengthening, they're
Yes.
holding
Yes.
on until they get
Yes.
to the point
Mm-hmm.
where I can let go and say, look,
Mm-hmm.
see, you're doing it yourself. Remember, you're using your tools.
Yeah.
I'm right here,
Right.
but remember, you're using your tools,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
creating that space for them to
Yeah.
remember that they can trust themselves.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's right. That's exactly right. And so it is. It's a process. It's, takes time. It takes as long as it takes.
It takes as long as it takes. Yeah.
And, that's the other thing is just, that's part of my role as facilitator. Part of your role as, facilitator is to, give people, like you said, I love, again, that analogy of helping them develop the muscles. I talk about it as going to the psychic gym, kind of like
Yes,
developing.
definitely. Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing. And just really being patient, with, and I have to do the same thing with myself because there's always that, like whatever next level I'm going to, I have to kind of build myself up to it. So, but that's beautiful. I really like that
So
whole image.
That's a perfect segue to my next question for you is what tools and practices do you find helpful for yourself to take yourself to your next level?
Well, primarily it's really, I do a lot of, I don't know, you could call it meditation, but it's a certain kind of awareness practices, just kind of like really sitting with myself. It's like I make a lot of space for myself just to be where I am and to really accept what shows up, so that's like a huge practice for me. It's a huge practice of, okay, what's happening right now and where are you right now? And really learning to listen, even when things are challenging, even when things are difficult, even when things are painful, because a lot of what I see other people do and what I see myself do, it's like, oh my God, something challenging or difficult comes up and then I want to get away from it, or I want to distract myself from it, or I want to try to fix it, or all those kinds of things. So the practice is really, a certain kind of meditation practice of just being present to whatever shows up. And, sometimes that can be really wonderful. Sometimes that can be really difficult, and really challenging. But that's my commitment. My commitment is really to that, because that's what I'm asking my students to do. And so that's what I really need to ask of myself. And then the other thing too, the other practice is listening, just really the practice of listening to my inner guidance, listening to my intuition, practicing obeying my intuition, because that's a huge one, because it's always talking to me, and I can't, there's a million times when, even though I teach this work, I do this work, and I'm always like, well, I don't know about that, and then I push it away or I ignore it, and then of course,
it comes back around and smacks you in the butt and says, hey,
exactly. That's right. Exactly. It's like, okay, I get it. Right. So those are two of the, it's the presence practice and it's the listening practice, the things that keep me really grounded, in myself and in my humanity too. It's like there's that connection to spirit, but then there's also that connection to, my human self. So.
Yeah. So important, I feel, to kind of help to embody it, just to really ground it into the earth and be the change. We keep seeing that kind of as memes on that, but here's how you actually be the change. Here's the meat in the seed to being the change.
Yeah. And there's so much, I mean, again, this is like, it's one of those things where I think sometimes people think that this process has to be more complicated than it is, and there's something, because that's one of the things where people are just like, oh, like when they get it, they're like, oh, it's just that, it's just that simple. It's just that simply being. It's just simply listening. It's simply, obeying and allowing your intuition and your spirit and your soul to lead you. That's all it is. I mean, it's a huge all.
It really is.
It's a huge all, but it's so simple. And I think, the mind tries to make things so much more complicated.
Yeah,
which,
yeah, because it has to be hard. And we've been trained that it has to be hard in order for it to mean anything, or you've had to hustle, and you've had to grind, and you've had to do kind of this compression to make it. Oh, diamond doesn't happen. It was a lump of coal, but it had to thrive under pressure.
Exactly. Oh my God, I'm getting stressed out just listening to you.
And that's kind of where we are all today. We're all stressed out. We're not
so stressed
happy.
out. Yeah.
We're just, and we think that everything that we do has to have some kind of monetary value for it to mean anything. And it doesn't have to be that. It can just be easy.
It can be easy, right? And the other thing that I really try to practice for myself, and that I try to work with my students too, is the trust. Really trusting that there is this deeper intelligence, that there's this deeper wisdom, that I have this inner healer, that I have this inner wisdom, I have this inner guidance. And if I can just slow down and listen, it will lead me, I mean, it really will. And that can be a hard thing to trust sometimes, because sometimes what it leads you into is silence for a while. Sometimes it leads you into not knowing for a while, and trusting that it has its own timing, and it has, again, its own wisdom. And so that's challenging, because like you said, we're in this culture that's all about the push and the drive and the control and the hustle and the, like going to 50 million miles an hour. And this is a whole different time frame, that's happening on this other level. So yeah,
and it's not linear either. That's
no.
drives us kind of batty. Like, we wish from idea to where it is to go, and wish it was like turn here, do like the GPS.
Yeah,
our internal GPS is not facing north; it's going west, and that's okay.
No, it's real. Well, the other thing I like to say, the intuition doesn't give you the map, because we want the whole map. We want to be like, okay, so I'm here, and you're going to lay the whole thing out for me, and then I'll be there. And it's like, it just gives you the next thing. And then you're like, okay, I have to trust that I do this next thing. And then you breathe, and then you do it. And it's like, now what? And it's like, okay, you get then the next thing, so there's so much surrender to that practice, because you don't know really where it's leading you.
And and I understand that's scary. I know I understand that's scary. I understand how scary that is.
Oh yeah.
It's part of that human condition again.
Yeah. And like you're saying, I mean, even though you and I are devoted to this, I mean, we're really devoted to this work. We're really devoted to this practice. I mean, one of the things I like to communicate to people is it doesn't make it any easier, just because, I mean, when I'm in that place of, oh my God, like, I don't know what's next, and I'm just being asked to trust in some other kind of intelligence, I'm just as, kind of freaked out as anybody else. I mean, I have my practices where I help myself to calm down, but it doesn't mean that it's easy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think sometimes I know for myself, when things are up for me, sometimes it's helpful to have that support system around me to kind of whisper my own words of wisdom to them back to me, to have those mirrors. So I can say, so it can be like, oh, so I do know what the heck I'm doing. Okay.
Exactly. No, and that's really true. I mean, because that's one of the things when, people will often ask me, like, well, what is it that you recommend for people in terms of, like, being able to access your creativity, for one thing, and really being able to trust in your creativity. And what we're talking about, when I think of creativity, it's spirit, it's soul, it's all of it, it's kind of all one big thing. And I always say, community is so important. It's something that you can't just do on your own, kind of like what you're talking about. Like, having the support, having people around you that are on the same path, that are devoted in the same way, and can help you, like you said, when you're kind of lost in the weeds, and they're like, okay, remember, you can trust, remember, you can breathe, remember, you can connect. So yeah, that's so
gorgeous.
Beautiful.
So Chris, so deeply appreciate you and all of the wisdom that you bring forth. And I have one more question for you.
Okay.
What space would you like to see creativity occupy as we move forward in this 21st century?
Wow. Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I mean, I mean, obviously, I'm sold on creativity, and I mean, I think it has to be everywhere. I mean, I mean, one of the things that really breaks my heart is how it's not in the schools any longer. Like that there, there's no art classes and there's no music classes and there's no dance classes, in the schools. And so kids aren't being supported, to really kind of be and express themselves creatively. I mean, so that would be one place just right there, is to bring it back into the schools. I mean, that's a really kind of a very grounded, kind of a thing. I mean, I would love to see, how there's like yoga studios on every corner. I would love to see like, creativity workshops, places where people could go and they could really tap into their creativity and they could really, feel supported and learn to listen to that again. And, and all of the problems that we're dealing with right now, I mean, in terms of the planet and the climate and the, the social justice stuff and all of it, I mean, we really need to be bringing our creativity. I mean, that's one of the things that's going to help to really solve things, and to really kind of move us in the next direction. Yeah, totally. So, I'd like to see people supported in their creativity, in all different kind of ways. So again, in the schools, having it just be of value, I mean, I was saying to my husband yesterday, I said, I'm so looking forward. I really would love to live in a culture that reflected my values, and I really feel like that's not happening. I mean, I have my own little cultures that reflect that, but not the bigger dominant culture. And the bigger dominant culture does not value creativity, except in this very narrow way, which is, again, you make a lot of money, you become a famous artist, which is great, but it's not the only game in town.
Yeah.
So, I would really love to see creativity be something that was valued and supported and available, to everybody. I mean, because I can't tell you how many people come to me, come to my classes and workshops and things. And, they're like, I really wanted to do this because I'm pretty sure I'm not creative, but I wanted to try it anyway. And oh my God, that's another thing that breaks my heart. It's like, for somebody to think that they're not creative.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like just, the most heartbreaking thing, because everybody is creative. I mean, it's part of the hard wiring of who we are.
Yeah.
So anyway, I would like to see it everywhere, pretty much.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I love that you highlighted that creativity is the way that we're going to find the solutions to all of the problems that we're seeing, that we've kind of inherited, and would love to see that be so.
Yeah, me too. That's my fervent prayer and my fervent wish.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Chris, again, thank you so very, very much for taking time out of your schedule to be with me. And my beautiful peoples, what did I tell you? Did I not tell you that this was going to be a gorgeous conversation? I told you this was going to be a gorgeous conversation. So I have got all of Chris's links so that you can connect with her, find out more about her, see if you are in resonance with what it is that she is offering, so that you can tap into your creativity and help clear some connections for your own journey. I am sending you much, much love. Chris, again, thank you so very much. Do go out and take very good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.